So we're always hearing about the future of Social Security and universal basic income. But what if the solution wasn't about taxes, but about technology? Today, we're diving into a really radical idea that uses the power of networks to completely rethink our social safety nets. All right, let's just jump right in with the central question that drives this whole concept. What if, instead of being a cost to society, Social Security could actually become a self-funding economic engine? And what if that very same system automatically gave every single citizen a direct stake in the economy's success? It's a pretty wild idea, so let's break down how it would even work. Okay, to really get this, you have to see the massive shift in thinking it represents. On one hand, you've got the old way. We collect taxes, and then we redistribute them through these giant bureaucracies. That system can sometimes create a sense of dependency. But the new way? It's all about creating brand new value within a network, using efficient algorithms instead of paperwork, and focusing on empowering people through direct ownership. So, before we can really build up this new model, we kind of have to understand why we'd even need one, right? The thing is, for all their good intentions, traditional Social Security and most UBI proposals tend to hit the same walls over and over again. And you can see how these problems are all connected. They create this vicious cycle. Funding these programs through taxes is always a huge political fight. The bureaucracy needed to run them can get super inefficient. And sadly, there's often this stigma attached to receiving help. The goal of this new model is to design a system that just avoids these traps right from the very beginning. Okay, so how does this new system get around that big, thorny funding problem? Well, this brings us to the first core pillar, a universal basic income that is not funded by taxes. Instead, it's funded by the economic activity of the network itself. It's a shift from just moving existing money around to actually generating new value. The first funding stream is, well, it's actually incredibly simple. It's just a tiny fee, we're talking 1 to 3%, on every single transaction that happens on the network. But here's the kicker. These are transactions that wouldn't even exist without the network. So you're not taxing the existing economy, you're just taking a tiny slice of brand new value being created. That provides a constant growing source of funding. Now, the second funding stream, this is where it gets really innovative. Every business on the network, which would be set up as what's called a Decentralized Autonomous Organization, or DAO, automatically contributes a tiny piece of its ownership, just 1 to 5% of its tokens, into a big shared pot that's owned by all the citizens. So as businesses grow, so does everyone's wealth. And when you put those two funding streams together, you get this beautiful, self-reinforcing loop. It's like a flywheel for the economy. More activity on the network means more fees. Those fees fund the UBI for citizens. That UBI gives people more money to spend, which, guess what, drives more activity on the network, which then generates more fees. You see? Social Security and economic growth suddenly start feeding each other.
Okay, so we've covered the income part, but this next piece is maybe even more revolutionary. It's not just about getting a check, it's about ownership. The system creates what's called a sovereign treasury, and you can think of it as, well, like a stock market for the people.
Yeah, and this quote from the source material really just nails the ambition behind it. I mean, just think about that for a second. Imagine a world where you don't have to be a savvy investor or have a bunch of extra cash to own a piece of the economy. Just by being a citizen on this network, you're in. You're a shareholder in everything. And we're not talking about getting a few shares in some risky startup that might go bust. No way. This sovereign treasury is set up like a huge, professionally managed investment fund. It holds a piece of everything: tech, healthcare, consumer goods, you name it. That diversification spreads out the risk, so citizens benefit from the success of the entire economy, not just from betting on one winner.
So what does this actually mean for you, the individual citizen? Well, the beauty of it is that it's supposed to be completely effortless. You don't have to do anything. Smart contracts handle all the investing for you. You automatically get a tiny slice of every new business that launches, and that value becomes available to you over time. Your personal wealth is literally tied to the growth of the whole community.
All right, so we've got a basic income and we've got ownership. But the model doesn't stop there. It also has a really novel idea for how we handle essential services like healthcare or education, using something called welfare tokens. Now, it's super important to understand what these tokens are, and maybe more importantly, what they aren't. Think of them as digital vouchers. Each one is backed by real value from the network, but it's earmarked for a specific service. And here's the key part. You can't sell them or trade them on the open market. This is huge because it prevents people from speculating on them and ensures they're only used for what they're meant for, getting people the services they need. And you can see here how you can create specialized tokens for different needs. You could have a health token, for instance, that's designed to pay doctors based on successful outcomes, not just for doing procedures. Or an edu token that's linked up with career development. Each token basically creates its own little mini economy, designed to be as effective as possible for that one specific service. Okay, so this all sounds incredibly ambitious, right? And with any big idea like this, you have to be honest about both the promise and the peril. There are huge potential upsides here, but also some really, really significant challenges to think about. So let's start with the promise. The potential economic benefits here are just massive. You're injecting money at the consumer level, which drives demand for businesses. You're giving people the financial security to maybe start their own business or learn a new skill. And most importantly, you're creating a system where what's good for business is also what's good for the community. Their incentives are finally aligned. But, we have to be real about this. The hurdles are just as big as the promise. First off, the sheer technical complexity of building and securing something like this is mind-boggling. Then there's governance. How do you make it democratic without it getting bogged down? How on earth do you even begin to switch over from the systems we have now? And for it all to work, you need pretty much everyone to buy in and use it. These are not small problems. So that really brings us to the big final question. Could a system like this actually work? Could we really turn Social Security from something we see as a cost into an investment engine that actually powers the economy? It's a huge shift in how we think. Now, whether it's a practical blueprint for the future or just a utopian dream, well, that's still very much up for debate. But it definitely challenges us to think bigger about what's possible.